Welcome to the Receiver Art Asset Overview. This last week we worked on a game for the 7-Day First-Person Shooter Challenge. Here's the gun I made, and I made all the internal parts because I didn't know exactly how detailed the gun was going to be. I thought we might want to be able to field strip it. And here are the levels. Each level uses some of the same parts, but also has other unique parts. I had some issues with shading. They don't look very big in this view, but when you actually get in the game and everything is huge, it seems like a much bigger deal. Each level is made up of 3 floors, and so it was actually quite a bit of content to produce all of this, essentially 30 different floors worth of content. Here's what some of the levels look like in the game. I wanted each area to be kind of unique. Sometimes you'll run into a dead end and be forced to backtrack. But that was intentional. There's a lot of interesting little nooks and crannies that we eventually ended up hiding tapes in. I was going for a kind of modern architecture meets industrial park type look for all of the levels here. I also made a bunch of props. The props are similarly kind of modern looking furniture that you might find at IKEA. These ones on the end are inspired by something called super furniture, which is something between the size of furniture and the size of a room. Here are the enemies. As you can see, only a couple of these guys made it into the game so far. I'm pretty happy with the design. I took some cues from commercial appliances. I even made arms, even though we decided not to use them. The reason we didn't use arms is because they would kind of get in the way of you seeing the gun, and they would have been really time-consuming to implement. Here's a couple of the enemies in action. I designed these rotors to spin in opposite directions so that they wouldn't need a tail fan. Here's a room full of turrets. I was really happy with how all of these enemies looked in the game. Some of the level shading, like in the foreground here, I was not so happy with, and I might redo at some point. I was influenced by a few things for this game visually. I based a lot of the visual design off of the Japanese animation film Akira, especially the colors, but also the idea of it taking place in this kind of industrial cityscape. The tape collecting mechanic was largely inspired by a game prototype that a friend of mine made. The game is called Animal Memory. You can find out more about that on his forum, Gauss Works. Overall, I was really happy with how the game came out and how the enemies worked. One of the big challenges for this project for me was working to an actual scale with real-world type objects. So I was very careful with getting the correct measurements for everything that I had. I also made models for the audio cassette player, you can see here. And these models are just as detailed as the gun because they would be for first-person manipulation, and also, of course, they're important for the story. I thought maybe we would have removable batteries, so that's why I added the battery hatch. We ended up using the tape, obviously. I also made a flashlight model. This 2 was just as detailed as the other equipment models. You can take it apart. I found very accurate measurements for this kind of flashlight online. I also made this little city scene to go outside of the levels but in front of the Skybox. For technical reasons, we weren't able to include it in the final release. If I knew beforehand what was going to work, I would have focused more on the level tiles. I also spent a lot of time writing and recording audio. Here's my sketchbook where I took a lot of notes, fleshing out ideas for the storyline and a lot of the text. I also figured out how to do cube map projection. So here's my scene for the Skybox that I used to generate the cube map. And I did a bunch of effects models for the particles. I thought that was kind of interesting because instead of using decals, we used these models, and in some cases I think it came out looking particularly good. Like, for example, when you shoot glass, I think that it looks a lot more realistic than if we'd used a standard decal. I designed the logo and the website, splash screen, icon, and I did Anton's OST cover and some concept art. And that was about it. Thanks for watching the Receiver Art Asset Overview. Check out the blog for more details. Don't forget, you can get this game free if you pre-order Overgrowth, or buy it by itself for about $5. Thanks.